Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football, continuing our deep dive into this Colorado program, heading into spring practice, fall camp, the 2024 season. Last week, we took a look at an offensive line that was just massively overhauled in the transfer portal, in the high school class. Now we're taking a look at the defensive line, and you're starting to say the same thing. I mean, Coach Prime, this staff did a phenomenal job identifying the weakness of this team in 2023 and going out and addressing it in the transfer portal, brought in a ton of phenomenal prospects that I want to get into and talk about what they bring to this defensive line heading into that 2024 year. Really excited to get into it. Before we do, just want to say thank you to you guys. And it has been a blast covering this program over the last couple of weeks as Coach Prime Colorado get extremely active in the transfer portal, breaking down all those commitments. The amount of support you guys showed to the boys was absolutely amazing. Cannot thank you guys enough. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And more importantly, the best part about doing these deep dives is hearing from you guys, learning from you guys. We're not going to bring up every single defensive lineman for this Colorado program. If I left a player out that you think has a breakout year in 2024, please bring that one up because, again, I learned a ton from you guys, and it's a blast talking ball with you guys in the comment section. And without further ado, let's get into this one. And I want to take us back to this 2023 defense and kind of just highlight the recipe against this Colorado team. It really wasn't a secret. This Colorado offense was extremely dangerous. They played at a high pace. They put a lot of opposing defenses in difficult spots. And so what you saw opposing teams do is, hey, we're just not going to let Shedeur Sanders and that Colorado offense touch the football. They started establishing the run. Teams averaged 4.7 yards per carry. That was 95th in the country. They ran for over 175 rushing yards per game. That was 102nd in the country. The number I have highlighted, 120th in time of possession. I mean, teams were just leaning on this Colorado defensive line, not letting Shedeur Sanders touch the football. Not only does this defensive line get better, that's going to help the defense as a whole. I think it's going to help this Colorado offense score more points because you're going to get more opportunities to touch the football. Some of the things that you see in the film, one, you just lacked depth last year, right? There was not a lot of rotation, and when the rotation was present, the 2 and 3 deep wasn't necessarily up to par with what Colorado needed. So I think the biggest storyline here is you take a look at this Colorado defensive line heading into 2024. It goes 3 deep. And we're about to talk about 10, 12 guys that are very quality players that are getting injected into this Colorado defense. So I think that's really the story that you're most excited about this Colorado team. Again, when you're dealing with guys who go 280 to 320 pounds, you want to keep those guys fresh. Colorado didn't really have the depth to do that. You look at this unit this year going into 2024, you start feeling a little bit more comfortable about the depth that this Colorado team has. Now let's get into this unit in 2024. And I want to start with that edge position. We're going to include some of that buck linebacker as well. But I want to start off with what I think is one of the best additions Colorado made in the transfer portal, and that is defensive lineman B.J. Green, the 7th best defensive lineman according to 24/7 Sports, available in the portal. The film backs it up. This is a guy that had a 14% pass rush win rate, 34 quarterback hurries, 8 sacks on the season. And what I love most about B.J. Green, going back, watching a little of that Arizona State film, 6'1", 270, his speed to power, his ability to be explosive, play with low pads, get his hands inside of offensive linemen, and just drag him right back into the quarterback. That's what stands out about B.J. Green. This is a guy that is a pocket disruptor. He's really strong in the run game. Again, 6'1", relatively short, able to play with low pads, low center of gravity, take on blocks, win at the point of attack. Not only does B.J. Green add 34 quarterback hurries in that 2023 year, phenomenal pass rusher, guy that could have gone to the NFL had he wanted to. I think more importantly, you're getting one of the better defensive linemen stopping the run that you saw last year. Going to mean massive things for this Colorado team heading into that 2024 year. And the next guy I want to talk about, another massive transfer portal addition, and that's Samuel Okunlola, coming over from Pitt, the 5th best defensive lineman, a top 50 player available in the transfer portal. And I think the thing with Samuel Okunlola is you haven't seen him really scratch the surface of what he can be. He's a young player going into year 3 and a guy that I think has massive upside. And very similar to BJ Green, heavy hands at the line of scrimmage. He's not necessarily that Ferrari burst and bend pass rusher. He's a guy that wants to get inside of offensive linemen, get inside their pads, put them back into the quarterback. You look at that combination of Sam Okunlola and BJ Green being two guys that are just heavy-handed, going to be collapsing pockets. I think you're probably looking at two starting defensive linemen heading into 2024. And I think what's so special about that is it is hard to find starting caliber guys on that defensive line available in the portal. And I think Coach Prime did exactly that. Now, the next guy I want to talk about, another transfer portal addition, especially at that edge position, a guy like Quincy Wiggins who can play inside, can play outside. Quincy Wiggins, the upside is absolutely phenomenal, right? There was a reason he was a top 50 national prospect coming into high school, or coming out of high school, at LSU. And the narrative around Quincy Wiggins, another guy that's only going into his third year of college football, there's still a lot of meat left on the bone in terms of what Quincy Wiggins can be. And there's a little bit of you kind of know why he struggled early at LSU. This was a guy that did not play a lot of football at the high school level, was a freak athlete, not necessarily the best football player. Year 3 of being in a college football program, what does that look like for a guy like Quincy Wiggins, who has all the talent in the world to be an all-conference defensive lineman? And if he puts it together, you're getting a defensive lineman that not only has freakish traits, but freakish versatility. A guy that you can play at that 3-tech, that you can play at that 5-tech, gives you that versatility, adds to that depth of the unit. And Quincy Wiggins, I don't know if I'd pencil him in as an immediate starter for Colorado. Certainly could be if that development takes place in the winter workout, spring practice, and fall camp. The last guy I want to talk about at that edge position, and another newcomer, and I think that's one of the things you're highlighting, is you look at this Colorado defensive line. I think they grabbed a bunch of starting caliber guys on that defensive line. Want to talk about Keaton Wade, a little bit more of that bursty, bendy edge rusher, probably play that buck position. 18 quarterback hurries, a 12% pass rush win rate at Kentucky, and another guy that's only going into year 3. And there's such a big difference between getting a veteran defensive lineman that's going into year 5 or year 6 versus a guy that's going into year 3, because the potential has not been reached for the guys at year 3. You kind of have a feeling of what you're getting from those guys going into year 5, year 6, because you kind of know what they are. I think it's what's special about guys like Sam Okunlola, Quincy Wiggins, Keaton Wade, is you don't know what their potential is. And again, another guy in Keaton Wade who, I expect to be certainly a contributor for this Colorado defense, and potentially a guy that starts for this Colorado defense in 2024. Now, I want to focus on the inside of this defensive line now, and that's really where you saw the depth really get tested. You return guys like Shane Cokes, like a guy like Amari McNeil. Bishop Thomas is a guy that I think could maybe take a step going into his own year 3, but you also add some depth too. And I think Shane Cokes probably penciled in right now as a starter. If you were to ask me who the other starter is on the inside of the defensive line for Colorado, I'm going to go with Chidozie Nwankwo coming over from Houston, a guy that is an absolute hammer in the run game. And you see the number on the screen, right? 5'11", 295, very similar conversation we had about BJ Green. Low center of gravity, low pad level, very good at getting off blocks. He's a phenomenal athlete for that size, but a guy that not necessarily the best pass rusher from the inside, but a guy that's going to be a hammer in the run game. 14 run stops for Houston in the Big 12 last year. The number I have circled in my note sheet here, 0.4 yards average depth of tackle. What does that tell you about those guys on the inside of the defensive line? If you're tackling the ball carrier 0.4 yards down the field, you're getting off blocks, you're winning at the point of attack, and you're making your plays at or behind the line of scrimmage. And that's what you see from the film of a guy like Chidozie Nwankwo, a guy that I don't know if he's going to stuff the stat sheet for Colorado in 2024, but a guy that is going to sit on some double teams, get off some blocks, and be a presence in the defensive line that, Colorado kind of had last year, but didn't have enough of, I guess you'd say. And again, just adding to that depth with guys like Shane Cokes and Amari McNeil, Bishop Thomas coming back to this program. Next guy I want to talk about, and another guy that I think probably an added depth piece, but a guy that you're going to see a lot of at Colorado, and getting back to the fact that you have the ability now to have a bunch of 300-pound dudes and you're rotating them in and out. Tori Carter coming from Arkansas, started a few games for Arkansas in 2023, played a lot for the Razorbacks. A guy that kind of similar to Chidozie Nwankwo, not necessarily going to be that stat sheet stuffer. He's not going to average 10 plus sacks in the season, but a guy that going to be a force in the inside, going to help Colorado improve that yards per carry given up from last year, and another rotational piece for that Colorado defense. And the last guy I want to talk about, and a very intriguing prospect in my mind, is big Anquin Barnes, right? This is a guy that spent the last 3 years at Alabama getting developed in that Alabama strength and conditioning room, and now goes to Colorado as another guy that I see kind of being a rotational piece. And now you start looking at that inside of that Colorado defensive line, where last year you probably had maybe 4 guys that you felt good about last year. Now you're looking at Chidozie Nwankwo, Tori Carter, Shane Coates, Anquin Barnes, Amari McNeil, Bishop Thomas. That's three deep, 6 guys on the inside that you're feeling pretty good about. You throw in a guy like Brandon Davis-Swain, who's coming in as a freshman, early enrollee. You could maybe put 7 there. I think the big story here for Colorado is on the inside of that defensive line. They have a bunch of depth and a bunch of guys that are big bodies that can stop the run. And then you look at the outside, BJ Green, Sam Okunlola, Quincy Wiggins. You're getting your pass rush from some of those guys at that edge rusher position. And kind of going back to the conversation we had last week with the offensive line, if there's one reason that you are really excited about Colorado and the steps they can make in 2024, it's what they did along the line of scrimmage. I don't think there's many teams in the country that can match what Colorado has on the outside. And we're going to start talking about that unit next week. Shedeur Sanders, the talent that they brought in at the wide receiver position and the defensive backs. I mean, we know Colorado's going to be good there. We're looking at the line of scrimmage, how well they can compete going into the Big 12. And you look at Coach Prime, the work that he put in the transfer portal, you're feeling pretty good about what Colorado can do on that defensive line. Fired up to see how this unit comes together. We're going to be monitoring spring practice, kind of finding out what this Colorado defensive line unit is about. We'll cut it there. Appreciate you guys rocking with the boys again. It's been a blast doing these deep dives into this Colorado program. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.